On Pei Hey Amid Beis, we're continuing now with the Mishnah of Yehuda Omer with regard to the Nusach Haget, V'dein Diahevi Lechi Minoi Sefer Teruchin V'geresh Shmukin V'get Pturin L'mhach L'hisnasba L'chol Kvar De Yis Yititz Bayim. So first we have to emphasize the word Vidain. And the Gemara is going to say later that we have to write the word Vidain without a yud. And Vidain means with this document, I'm divorcing you. And Rabbi Yehuda, as we'll see later, holds Yadayim Sheidim Ochichas Lo V'Yadayim, and therefore it's not clear that he's divorcing her with this get. Maybe he's using the get as a shtar raya, and he thinks he can divorce her with amira, just with words. And then Rabbi Yehuda adds the word minai, from me. No, it's this get is coming to you from me. Now, we have a principle, Eino de Megarish Eishes Chavera, so obviously it's coming from me. So we're not sure right now why Rabbi Yehuda requires and insists that we add the word minai. And it's a Sefer Gerushin, and he Gerasi Zuvin, it's a get Ptur, and now she can go and marry whoever she wants. So in other words, it comes out according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not sufficient just to write Hareat Muteres L'chol Adam. It's got to be crystal clear from the get itself that he is being Megarisha through this get. Gufo shall get Shichur. When a man owns an Eved Knani and he's Meshacher, he emancipates his Eved Knani, then the text of the get Shichur should be, okay, he used the case of a shivcha, but it's the same thing would apply in masculine form in an eved. Hareat bas chorin, hareat liatzmich. And now we're going to see in the Gemara, what if he switches it around and he uses what would be a classic nusach for a get shichur, he uses it for a get isha or vice versa. Pshita. Omar lo ishto. If a man writes to a woman in the get hareat bas chorin lo amar v'lo klub, the language of hareat muteres l'chol adam indicates that the get is a matir, but bas chorin is a language of hafkas kinyone avdus, and therefore it's not an appropriate language, and the get is not chal at all. Omar lo l'shivcha. So in the flip case, in a case of a shichur, he writes a shtar shichur to his shivcha, and he writes hareat muteres l'chol adam lo amar v'lo klub. Because in fact, she's not allowed to marry a Ben Yisrael. She's a Shivcha. That would be an Isulav of Kedeshus. She's still a Shivcha now. Now, but Omar Loli Shah, he says to a woman in the get, Hareat li atzmech, mal. What is the meaning of li atzmech? You're unto yourself. Legamri ka Omar Lo, maybe he means that she's Megureshes completely. Oh, maybe Lebalacha ka Omar Lo. Maybe he's just waiving his demand that she work and bring her wages into the marriage. And he's not indicating a language of Gerish. And the Gemara answers, Amalei Ravina Ravashi, Toshma Disnan, it says in our Mishnah, Gufo shall get Shichra, Hareat Bas Chorin, Hareat Liatzmech. So we see that Hareat Liatzmech is a valid language for Shtar Shichur, and now we're going to have a Kalachom. Ma Avda Dekani Le Gufe. In the case of an Eved whose gufo is kanuli adon, and nevertheless, ki omer le'areat li'atzmech, if he says you are unto yourself as kane gufe, that language is strong enough and powerful enough to be mishacher and Eved and be mafkia a kinyan aguf, is how much more so le'isha de lo kane gufo. We don't need such a strong language because the kinyan of embal be'ishto is only a kinyan iser, it's not a kinyan momon. Is lo kolshkin, how much more so that a reat liatzmech would certainly be makna to the woman whatever kinyan she has, a limited kinyan of a kinyan isur, and therefore the get would be chal. And now we get to a list of other sveikas in the Lashonis of the Shtar Shichur Eved. Omalei Ravina Rav Ashi Omal Lo. The Adon says to his Eved, Ainli Esek Bach Mahu. Is this a meaningful language for Shichur Eved? Amal le Rav Chanin Rav Ashi vi Amri le Rav Chanin michuzna le Rav Ashi. Tashma desanya mocher avdo liobed kochavim. A Jewish man who owns an eved and he sells the eved to kochavim, yotzel acheres, the eved goes free. And nevertheless, tzarek gets shichur me Rabbo Rishon. He still needs to get shichur to be mater ha to a Bas Yisrael. Omar Rav Shimon ben Gamliel b'midvar mamurim. When is this true that an eved needs to get shichur? Kshalo kosav le didn't write to her. Oh no, meaning a star shichur. Avalim kosav olav. Oh no, if the Adon wrote a shtar shichur to his eved, then zeu shichura. He doesn't need an extra get shichur. And the Gemara says, "My ono Amar of Sheishes the cost of lolach shetivrach mimeni ein li esik bach." That when the Adon sold the eved to an akum, he wrote a nusach of l'shetivrach mimenu, that if you will be able to run away from the akum, then ein li esik bach. So you see that you don't need to give an additional get shichur with once there was a nusach of ein li esik bach. So ein li esik bach is a meaningful, valid language for shtar shichur. Now we get back to the Mishnah of Rabbi Yehuda Omer V'dein. Rabbi Yehuda requires V'dein. The Tanakama said all you need is harei muteres chalon. Rabbi Yehuda says no, you have to be more explicit. And you have to add that this get shichur that you're getting from me is, this get pturin that you're getting from me is your gerish, it's your get. And what is the nature of this machlokas in Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda? Even though we don't have a yad mochia, there's a kitzur dibur, there's an incomplete language. And there's no absolute proof from the language that he used what his intention was, but nevertheless, it's considered a yad, like a handle of a kli that you could pick up the kli, and it's meaningful as if he had completed his words. And v'afal gavdalo kasav le v'dein, Chachamim maintain that yodayim she'enim mochichos haven yodayim, even if he left out the word v'dein, and therefore you're not 100% sure that he wants to megarisha with this get. Mucha milsa de bahai gita kamagarishla. Yad she'enim ochiach means that we see from the circumstances that his intention is to be megarisha with this get. From the very fact that he had the get written and he gives the get to her. Again, it's not a complete hochacha, but it's at least yodayim she'enim ochichos. And they are considered yadayim. And there's enough for Gili Das that he wants to divorce her for this get to be chal. And therefore he doesn't have to add the word v'dein. Rabbi Yehuda Savar yadayim she'em ochichos of yadayim. V'taima de kosav lo. The get is only kosher because he added the word v'dein. The mucha milsa, now it's crystal clear, absolute. The Bahai Gita Kamagarisha, he's divorcing her with the get. And the get is effectuating the hafkas, ishus, and the creases. If he omitted the word v'dein, according to Rabbi Yehuda Amri, we're going to suggest the possibility that b'dibura gersha, he divorces so just with a verbal, oral declaration, arev muteres chol adam, v'shtara, and now that he's writing a shtar, that's raya b'alma, that's only a proof to substantiate that he divorced her, but the divorce was through Amira. And therefore, in order lafuke, so we don't come to that conclusion, he must write the word v'dein in the get. With this get, I'm effectuating gerushin. Now, the next sugya, until the next Mishnah, is going to deal with spelling issues in a get. And basically, we would have to learn to really appreciate the sugya and all the nuances and how we paskin. We'd have to learn the poskim here. But the basic text of a get is Patras Yichi Lichi and plonis bas ploni, the havi it's mikadmus non. Ukidu patris v'shavkis v'truchas yesichi, ditehevian rashoy v'shaltov v'nafshaychu, lemahach, ulis nasba l'cholman dis yasmu. V'nishlo yimchi b'yadaychu b'nyom denanu liol. V'dein heavy lichi b'noi get turim v'sefer terucha v'ger shmukin kedas Moshe l'Yisrael. Omar Abaye, Haim because of Gittin. Here are the instructions for a sofer who's writing a get. Lo lichtov v'dein, he should not add a yud between the dalet and the nun. The mashma v'din. V'din means din Torah or din mishpat, as if to say that I'm divorcing you because I am obligated to divorce you based on the din and the mishpat. And that would imply that if he does not have a chiyuv to divorce a b'din, then the get would not be chal. It would be batal. Ela v'dain. You should write v'dain without the yud. And v'dain means with this document. V'lo lichtov igeres. Don't add the yud to the word igeres. The mashma igeres igra. Igra means a roof. Ela igeres without the yud. There's no possibility of misunderstanding what he means by igeres without a yud. And igeres is actually a Lashon Kodesh, whereas igra is Aramaic. Weiter. Lo lichtov with a yud limahach. Why? Because limahach with a yud can be split into two different words. Take one word and split it down the middle to mashma limahach. Two separate words. And if we translate li mahach into Lashon Kodesh, it's shali tiyeh. You should be mine, which is the exact opposite of again. So therefore, it's critical that you leave out the yud and it becomes l'mahach. Lo lichtov lim chach. He should be machbid to make sure that the regel of the chaf goes all the way down. No. Sorry, we're going to get to that soon. I jumped the gun. We're talking now about the chet of limcha. And second. And it has to be limahach and not limchach. And the difference between limahach and limchach is only a small piece that connects the regel of the hay to the top gag, which makes it into a ches. And therefore, be very careful. Abai instructs the sofer not to write it as a ches. The mashma ki chucha, limchach is miloshen chucha. Chucha is a joke, a tzchok. Then when he writes dit hevyod udit titziatzman, tlasa yud, make sure there are 3 yuds. Why? If I'll write only with 2 yuds, mashma tehevyon v'titzbayon, in the third person, he's referring to other women. That other women will be allowed to get married. He has to say that she will be allowed to get married. Vilorche. Now we get to the problem of a yud that has to be a nun, and therefore the leg of the yud has to be carefully drawn down. Is levav de teruchin ulevav de shvukin. If the vav is not written properly, then it's a yud. And if it's a yud, mashma trichin ushvikin. Again, he's referring to all women, that all women should be mutter, and they should be allowed to get married. He's not referring to herself. V'lurche levav de kidu, and make sure that the vav of kidu is a long vav. Otherwise, it'll look like a yud. Mashma u kidi. Kidi is an Aramaic word which means nothing, for nothing. V'lo lichtov de isnasva. You should not put an aleph at the beginning of the word de isnasva. Because mashma lo yisnasva. You will not get married ela de lehis nasva. You should write it with a hey and not an aleph. Iboile be'ina and v'dain o lo be'ina. Do we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda and we require v'dain? I'm divorcing you with this get, or like the Chachamim? Tashmadi askin Rav made of takana to write begiti the nusach of ech planya bar planya potar v'sorech yas plonisa intese tavis intse min kedam denan miyom denan olam, which means ploni ben ploni potar v'giresh es plonis ishto shaisa ishto ad achshav v'tehei megureshes miyom zev yad olam v'ilu v'dein lo kamar. Rava didn't add the word v'dein. So it means that we don't paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, we paskin like Chachamim. So the Gemara rejects it. Ulutamei. If you're telling me that Rava here is giving you the exact and complete nusach haget, kulu mika omar. I mean, it doesn't say you're being medayik that Rava omitted the word v'dein, but in truth, Rav is not going through the entire full nusach of the get. For example, day tehevyon, like that doesn't appear here in the get, in the nusach of Rava. Ella be'inon, but rather there are many things that are required to be written in the get, even though they're not mentioned by Rava. And hachinani be'inon here too, maybe Rava would actually require that we write the word v'dein with this get, pasking like Rabbi Yehuda. Now Rava's girsa or nusach of the get has miyoma dinan from today. Why did Rava insist that we write miyoma dinan? Lafuki mit Rabbi Yossi di Omar Zmano shel shtar mochiachol. If we don't have to write that she's megureshes from today, because there's a date written on the get, on the top of the get, and that date indicates that the ger should be chal now. Now we have a nusach of miyoma dinan uli olam. Why did Rava add the word uli olam, that you're mutter from today and forever and ever, here on Daf Pei Vav? Lafuke miraboy mine Rava Rav Nachman. Rava asked Rav Nachman back on Daf Pei Gimel Amid Beis, what's the din di Amar HaMehayom im iat ishti l'mocher at ishti? He wants the Megarisha just for today, and tomorrow she'll be married to him, and there won't be a Gerushin. And Rav Nachman said, came into Posca. She is Megureshes. So Rava Masakin in the Get Li Olam to make it clear that he's not divorcing her for one day. The Mishnah says, Gufo shall get shichra rei at bas chorin rei at liatzmech. Asking Rabbi Yehuda made a takon in the nusach of a star of selling avodah v'shtar zvini di avda. Avda dinan mutzdak li avda. This Eved is now in a state of avdus. Upotevi otim in cherure umini lule umini rure malku malkasa. Umuflag mikol cheres. He's excluded, far away from any freedom. Mikol alila, and from any claim of the king or the queen. The Roshim di inish lo is aloi, and the Rishima of the semen of the Adam Acher ain't alov. There's no semen that he belongs to someone else. He's being sold now and transferred to somebody else. And he's free of any blemishes or boils that might appear on his head for the next 2 years. And my asvasa, the Gemara asks, how do we find a remedy for shchin, for these kinds of boils? And what is the cure for recurring boils? Amar Abaye says ginvara, which is called in Hebrew zangabil, or in English it's called ginger, umartecha, which is psoles sige kesef, the dross of silver, and kavrisa, otherwise known in Hebrew as gafris, or sulfur, v'chola de chamra, and wine vinegar, umishcha de zesa, olive oil, v'natpik chivara, and white nafta, v'shayfi le begadfa de arvza, and he smears it on his body, this whole mixture, with a goose feather. And that leads us to the Mishnah here on Daf Pei Vav.